Welcome to the Higher Ed Happy Hour podcast, brought to you by Unincorporated, a higher education agency committed to building awareness and growing enrollment for universities. This podcast provides deans, senior admin, and faculty with the tools, resources, and information they need to grow student interest, design branded content, and launch new programs and courses. Let's jump into today's episode. Hey everyone, Robert here from Unincorporated. I'm joined again today by Ian and Mac. How are you both doing?
Doing well.
Good, Robert.
Awesome. Well, if you all have been keeping up with the news, you've probably heard that the majority of colleges and universities plan a return to in-person instruction this fall. And over the past few weeks, the question of whether schools should require students to be vaccinated for COVID-19 before enrolling has dominated conversations across the higher education landscape.
Yes, that's right. And we may not see the debate and sensitivity surrounding this issue dying down anytime soon. And regardless of where a given institution has landed on their decision, the stakes are high, and there are definitely strong arguments on either side. And I guess I should also add that while it may seem that the hard work is now over and most institutions have made their decision and should move on, we've actually been encouraging leadership to develop communications plans that support their decision.
That's right, Ian. 91% have decided, but it's true. Many universities need to roll out a strategic communications plan around their stance.
Yep. And here's why. Let's look at a few of the numbers. The statistics point that whichever way your college or university has decided to go, the implications of that decision are wide and varied, impacting the current, often overextended student commitment period. These extensions are due to very slow enrollment conversions, but they might also relate to how we're all relating to this internal decision of whether or not to vaccinate or not. And so 13% of U.S. adults are reporting that they will definitely not get the vaccine, according to a Kaiser study. It was the Kaiser Family Foundation COVID-19 vaccine monitor. And another 17% are taking the wait and see approach. So while this is a very personal decision, the decisions of almost a third of accepted students could be at stake based on those numbers.
You're right, Ian. And I think the bottom line here is how faculty position their decision will directly affect their enrollment. I cannot emphasize this enough. Universities need to over-communicate their decision and communicate their reasoning with both students and parents. Right now, a lot of universities are just putting up FAQs of whether or not they require the vaccination, and they only give a yes or no, but they're not giving the explanation behind it. There is some risk involved in backing up your positioning. There could be potential damage to the brand, the reputation, and your overall results. But your communication plan should consider these risks and include strategies to confront them.
Exactly. And through our experience in working with schools on their branding and communication, we always come back to a few best practices that will be instrumental to a successful communication plan. First, you want to promote versus defend. No doubt there's been a considerable amount of scientific research, listening to stakeholders, and balancing different alternatives that went into your institution's ultimate decision to require this particular vaccination or not. So don't be afraid to craft a compelling story that points to these fundamental elements of sound decision-making. Be proactive and promote those factors rather than defend the decision.
Nice. I love the idea of promoting versus defending your decision. The second attribute of a successful communication plan around your decision would be to drive your core values, lean into those core values. Research tells us, in fact, that the strongest appeals are those that are built around the fundamental core values that make your institution what it is. And of course, this is a big part of the reason why students chose or are deciding to choose your school to begin with. These core values should be front and center, right? Let's make them the star of the show, if you will. And by doing so, you can develop your communication strategy around that. They can be featured prominently as if you're crafting key messages around your decision and featured on your website, in your advertising campaign, maybe in your press releases. And with this communication, you can remind students and parents who you are, who you've always been, and show them how your decisions and the steps that you're taking to support them are based on these core values.
And obviously, you'll need messaging around these core values. Every message you send out, whether it's regarding this decision or not, should be filtered through that funnel of your core values of your university. So first, it may be a good idea to revisit your messaging platform and make some space for these new policies. It's also crucial to lead with empathy in your messaging. There can be a lot of sensitivity around this topic because there's a lot of personal, religious, and health-related circumstances that influence people's decision. If you broaden the message for outside perspectives, there is a good chance that you won't ostracize as many people. And this may require exploring your university's resources and assets to be able to utilize them.
That's right. So we want to promote versus defend. We want to drive our core values. And then also, don't be afraid to leverage all of your assets. Sometimes important messages are delivered more effectively when they come from someone other than the ultimate decision maker. In this case, it's those who are not deciding whether to require vaccinations. So here's where the backing of faculty, deans, and trusted student-oriented administrators can be really powerful. Prominent faculty in medicine, public health, and human science disciplines can be enlisted to offer their expert views on physical safety and mental health, while their counterparts in ethics, political science, and law could speak to the personal freedom and governance issues. In any event, enlisting and aligning faculty and staff is a must.
Yeah. And this you don't see very often. In fact, faculty, staff, administration, sometimes left out of the equation when it comes to making this decision. But as a faculty member at Cal State LA, I can speak firsthand experience. I've really appreciated their effort to get faculty and staff aligned around the decision. And also, the ways that they've accommodated and allowed flexibility in how I'm delivering my courses in the fall, whether that's in person, fully online, or a hybrid model.
Yeah, and universities can even take this a step further to include student voices from the people that are directly impacted by this key decision. Students have often been left waiting on the sidelines in the midst of important discussions on school policies. And in this case, stakeholders have a unique opportunity to consult students and get their support. These influential voices may derive from student-led groups concerned with health and safety, graduate students researching similar topics, undergraduate students in related studies, student government representatives, and any other students wanting to weigh in. This past year, we've seen a dramatic increase in student involvement in social, ethical, and political movements, and universities can do a lot to further this impact.
Yep. Great point. Okay, so if you're keeping track, fourth on our list for developing a strong communications plan is to continue to leverage your online courses. Online courses remain critical. Here's why. You've likely invested a considerable amount of money and other resources over the past year to develop and roll out online courses and remote instruction processes and procedures, with the quality of those programs and the success of those efforts building over time. So that means that investment will still generate value in the future if you keep online courses as a central component to your curriculum. Online programs provide viable alternatives for those qualifying for vaccine mandate exemptions, as well as those vaccinated students who don't feel comfortable mixing with non-vaccinated students. And pointing to these expanded alternatives and continuing to increase their quality and availability can instill a comfort level that can drive or confirm decisions yet to be made in the future.
Yeah, and making faculty and students feel comfortable with these sometimes sensitive topics is so important right now. Kind of like I mentioned before, we need to recognize that the vaccination is a very personal decision on choosing whether or not to be vaccinated. As we know, with any important decision, it can be really easy to only see one side. But I would advise to avoid turning the personal into the political. By respecting others' decisions, even if you don't agree with them, and leading with empathy, your university brand can uphold a positive message, one that supports safety as well as equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yeah, that's great. So before we wrap up, let's just recap the key points to creating a communication plan to support your decision on COVID-19 vaccines. First, You want to promote your decisions instead of defending yourself. Next, you want to build on the core values that make your institution unique. You want to leverage all of your assets, including faculty and students, to deliver the message. You want to continue to prioritize online courses as an option for students. Don't let the personal become political. And most importantly, lead with empathy. If you want to reference anything that we've talked about today, you can check out the blog on this exact topic on our website. Ian and Mac, thanks as always for a great discussion today.
Always a pleasure, Robert. Thank you, Mac.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Happy Hour podcast. For more higher ed specific resources, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please visit unincorporated.com.